Incredible rescue. Teen mom is saved from a brutal snowstorm by a U.S. Marine. The touching true story. Jenna stared out at the swirling snow, the biting wind howling a chilling warning. She had to make it to her grandmother's house. No choice. Her infant son, Lucas, was safely tucked in at home, the weight of responsibility pressing hard against her chest. But her grandmother's health was failing. Her dreams of nursing felt as far away as the unreachable horizon beyond the blizzard. This snowstorm was more than a harsh Montana winter. It was a wall closing in on the faint flicker of hope she clung to. With each step, Jenna could feel the heavy drifts slowing her progress, sapping her energy. The frigid air bit at her cheeks, each gust whispering doubts. What if she couldn't make it? The skinny thread binding her to the dream of a brighter future snapped with each crunch of snow underfoot. She questioned her choices, her determination wavering as she pushed forward blindly, the suffocating isolation of the storm swallowing her whole. Everything around her felt like a world of white, an endless expanse that mocked her solitary struggle. I can't do this, she thought, her breath coming in shallow bursts. Maybe this was a mistake. She hesitated, fear creeping in. Would anyone even notice if she disappeared into the snowy abyss? What would happen back home to Lucas if she didn't return? The image of his sweet face ignited a fire in her core, a desperate flicker of resolve. But here, surrounded by a storm that felt determined to break her spirit, self-doubt gnawed at her. Before the chilling winds could freeze her spirit completely, she heard a crunching sound, footsteps echoing against the storm. Panic surged. Was it an animal? Or worse, a stranger? But as a figure emerged through the curtain of snow, her heart raced, not from fear, but an innate thirst for connection in this desolate moment. He looked like a warrior against the elements, a tall man with a confident stride, seemingly unfazed by the gale. "Hey!" the voice called out, cutting through her swirl of thoughts. "You need help?" Before she could respond, Jenna's mind reeled. Here was this man, a beacon of hope against the cold, a patch of warmth in her frozen reality. But who was he? She couldn't just trust a stranger. What if he was a distraction from the path she must take? Torn between the instinct to accept his offer and maintain her independence, humiliation and hope battled within her. As he got closer, Jenna felt an unexpected pulse of gratitude mixed with fear. Their eyes met, and she could see the weight of his past etched across his face. Part curiosity, part tenderness. There was an unspoken understanding. In that moment, he became not just a stranger but a potential ally. "I'm trying to reach my grandmother's. She's sick," she confessed, feeling vulnerable and exposed. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Jenna's heart raced as they started to move together against the storm's relentless push. The snow swirled around them, smothering the sound of their footsteps, pressing against the walls of her uncertainty. Each step felt monumental, her secret aspirations hanging in the balance against the backdrop of this icy chaos. Conversation flowed like the wind, easy at first, her dreams of nursing mingling with the mundane. But as the wind howled, her vulnerability seeped through the cracks, threatening to drown her in self-doubt again. Suddenly, disaster struck. A freezing surge of air uprooted massive branches, crashing down around them like a warning bell. Panic seized her. She stumbled in the chaos, tumbling into the snow. "This can't be happening," she thought as terror twisted in her gut. In the face of imminent danger, she felt her resolve shatter. Would she be able to fight against not just the storm, but the fears that plagued her? Jenna's heart thundered within her, while Ben stood beside her, bracing against the storm, a silent sentinel in the growing darkness. As they struggled to regain their footing amid the tumultuous blizzard, Jenna realized survival now required more than physical strength. It required an unconditional leap into trust. As the elements raged around them, two lost souls faced an uncertain future. Would they find their way? Or would the weight of their pasts crush the flickering flame of hope she clung to? The storm howled louder, leaving an electric tension hanging between them, a connection newfound yet fraught with the weight of unshared burdens. Unsure of what lay ahead, their gazes locked, revealing the raw vulnerability that had emerged amidst their fight against nature. Defining moments shrouded in lingering uncertainty beckoned them both towards somewhere they needed to be. As Jenna regained her footing, her mind raced, matching the pace of her pounding heart. The branches, jagged and formidable, lay strewn across the path like obstacles in her own self-doubt. She had spent her life fighting against the tide, yet here she was, faced with nature's fury, feeling smaller than she ever had before. Ben extended a hand, and for a moment she hesitated, battling the instinct to remain independent. But as the icy wind stung her eyes, clarity washed over her. It was not just about survival. It was about shared resolve. Trusting this stranger might be the key to moving forward. She grasped his hand tightly, feeling the warmth radiate from the palm that contrasted sharply with the encompassing cold. "Let's go! We need to find shelter!" he yelled over the howl of the wind, urgency lacing his tone. With each careful step they took, Jenna felt a deepening strength course through her. Ben wasn't just a protector. He was reminding her she didn't have to face every challenge alone. She reflected on her life as a single mother, battling the odds, juggling school, work, and the tireless nurturing of Lucas. Each success had come at the cost of relentless struggle, yet she had somehow emerged stronger every time. Perhaps leaning on someone else, if only for a moment, wouldn't signify weakness, but a step toward a new understanding of strength. As they pushed against the storm, she found herself talking more freely, sharing dreams of becoming a nurse and the motivations that sparked that desire. "My grandmother's been my greatest inspiration. She was a nurse who cared for so many." With every word etched across the cold air, she felt the weight of her aspirations solidify around her, knitting the frayed edges of her confidence. Ben listened intently, his gaze steady and unflinching. "You're fighting hard for your family," he replied, and Jenna noticed admiration in his voice. That's something to hold on to, even in the darkest of storms. Encouraged by his words, she opened up about her fears. The thought of failing both Lucas and her grandmother felt like the very storm they were traversing. What if I don't make it? Or what if I fail as a mother? I've sacrificed so much. Her voice wavered slightly, revealing the gaping void where her conviction had begun to falter. "Fear is normal," he assured, his tone calm and resonant. "What matters is how you respond to it. You're not only fighting for your dreams but for him, Lucas. That's a powerful motivation. Let that be your North Star." Something about his belief in her ignited a fire she couldn't quite ignore, illuminating the darker corners where doubt had thrived. Yet as her confidence surged, another thought emerged. Was it possible to forge a new path beyond just survival? Could she seize opportunities to grow, not only from this experience but from the connection they were beginning to forge? As they trudged deeper into the storm, the faint outline of a lifeboat, a tiny cabin, appeared through the blowing snow. Relief swept through her, but with it came a nagging question. Once the storm passed, would she still rely on Ben for strength, or would she step into the light of her own aspirations? Before she could articulate anything more, a shadow lunged forth from the cabin, breaking through the cloud of white. The figure was indistinct, but Jenna's heart plummeted. In a storm where trust had barely taken root, could this new presence herald hope? Or would it be yet another layer of doubt threatening to sweep her confidence away? As the icy winds howled like fierce wolves around them, the reality of the moment started to set in. Jenna stood on a precipice, the choice before her rapidly narrowing. Would she embrace the risks that came with opening herself to others? Or would the tempest have the final say in what dreams could be realized? In that fleeting moment, the shadow materialized into a figure not entirely unfamiliar. Yet Jenna felt both relief and anxiety crashing over her like the freezing wind. It was a man, burly and stout, wearing a heavy jacket. He called out to them, voice booming over the storm, a lifeline from the swirling chaos. "Get inside, quickly!" Drawing on the surge of hope that ignited within her, Jenna grabbed Ben's arm tightly as they rushed forward, dodging snow-laden branches while the wind roared in protest. As they hurried into the cabin, the warmth enveloped them, a stark contrast to the brutal cold outside. For a brief moment, Jenna allowed herself to lean against the wall, letting the adrenaline fade while she processed the whirlwind of emotions that tugged at her. Inside, the man introduced himself as a ranger named Jake. The cabin was simple but sturdy, a refuge lined with emergency supplies. Jenna's heart raced with gratitude, but that infernal question tugged at her internal dialogue. Is this help mere coincidence, or a chance orchestrated by the universe? How lucky are we, Ben murmured, sitting down beside Jenna. There was a spark in his eyes she hadn't noticed before. You see, relying on others doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. His words resonated, cutting through her spiraling thoughts. Jake busied himself at a small stove, stoking a fire while glancing over at them. Jenna felt another layer of anxiety peel away, revealing an unsettling truth. Her earlier fears about relying on others weren't merely about trust. They were about relinquishing control. The truth swelled in her mind. Could she afford to let herself lean on someone else? Or would that unravel the fragile stitches of independence she'd worked so hard to sew? Listen, I know this storm is a metaphor for something bigger, Jake said, settling near them with a steaming cup of cocoa. Life has a funny way of throwing you into the chaos just when you think you've got it all figured out. His words struck a nerve. How often had she felt that sense of impending disaster, as though she were merely treading water? Jenna took a breath, letting the warmth of the cocoa seep into her palms. Maybe this was the opportunity she hadn't known she needed. Perhaps the storm in all its fury was less about testing her inherent strength and more about nudging her towards accepting the help of others. Do you believe in signs? She asked softly, looking from Jake to Ben. They exchanged glances, and she realized that they were two different mirrors reflecting her own tumultuous thoughts. Ben smirked. Only if they lead to something good. Jake nodded. Life will keep throwing challenges at you, but it's how you respond that transforms those moments into something meaningful. The fire crackled, and Jenna's mind raced. The swirling uncertainties of her future pressed down on her like cold snow, but here, in the heart of the storm, a spark ignited within her to confront the doubts that had haunted her relentlessly. She could forge her path without losing her core, without abandoning what made her fierce and resilient. What if this was her moment to step up, embrace uncertainty, and adopt a mindset that sought growth rather than merely surviving? The weight of her decisions felt heavy, but a flicker of determination sparked. She glanced at Ben, meeting his open gaze, and felt a strange but comforting sense of camaraderie. Perhaps the connection with him could fuel her own aspirations further than she had thought possible. She wanted to not just survive this storm, but emerge stronger on the other side, willing to open doors she had swiftly shut in a bid to maintain her independence. But just as resolve bloomed within, there was a palpable shift in the cabin. Jake's face suddenly sharpened, caught between concern and urgency. You two need to be ready. This storm is more than just snow and ice. We might not be safe for long. Jenna's heart leapt. The storm outside seemed to reflect the frayed edges of her spirit. To confront the chaos both outside and within would mean to face her fears head-on. But would she find the strength she needed, or would they succumb to the tempest's fury once again? As dread settled in her gut, one thing became clear. This was only the beginning. The storm and her journey toward realizing her aspirations were far from over. Jenna leaned forward, her focus shifting from the fire to the men in the cabin. The flickering light shadows danced ominously on the walls, reflecting her turbulent thoughts. The urgency in Jake's voice hung in the air, a reminder that the chaos outside was only a mirror for the tumult that churned within her. What do you mean we might not be safe, Inu? She asked, her brow furrowing. She was not ready to face another layer of fear, not now when she had just begun to confront her doubts about reliance and survival. Jake looked between her and Ben, his expression grave. This storm could worsen. We need to prepare for any eventuality. I've been through many storms like this one, and they can change course quickly. His eyes glinted with a resolve that made Jenna question her own. Can I rise to the occasion? What if I can't? She swallowed hard, feeling the knot of anxiety tighten. Ben shifted in his seat. What do we need to do? His voice was steady. First, we gather supplies, Jake instructed, We'll need our backpacks filled, food, warmth, anything to sustain us in case we get stuck here longer than expected. Ideally, we also need to assess the external conditions before it gets too dark. The rational urgency resonated with Jenna, igniting her instincts. I can help with that, she said, surprising even herself. The weight of her earlier hesitations began to shift. Adrenaline tinged her thoughts with clarity. Good. Let's divide and conquer. Jake nodded as he began pulling items out from the cabinet, laying them across the table. Ben, you stay with me to help gather food and water. Jenna, you can check the front porch for anything we can use, and keep an eye on the storm. Jenna nodded, her heart racing not from fear, but from the budding realization that this was her moment to step up. She moved toward the door, the warmth of the cabin dissipating as she stepped back into the frigid air. Snow lashed against her cheeks, the cold invading her senses, but she welcomed it. Each bite of cold was a reminder of her own strength, a physical manifestation of the barriers she had built around herself, keeping others at arm's length. As she scanned the front porch, she stumbled upon a discarded shovel, half buried in the snow. A thought struck her. She had dug her way through her career and personal life, battling through every challenge thrown her way without yielding. Why hadn't she considered doing the same with her relationships? Jenna grasped the shovel tightly, drawing parallels between her past struggles and the present scenario. It was as if the storm not only reflected her need for survival, but showcased the deeper layers of endurance required to allow others in. The shovel became a metaphor for her willingness to dig deeper, not only for resources but within herself. She returned to the cabin full of resolve. I found a shovel. We can use it to clear a path or to dig as needed. The excitement in her voice broke through the tense atmosphere. Great thinking, Jake acknowledged, a hint of pride in his voice. As he took the shovel from her, Jenna noted the shift in their dynamic. He was treating her as an equal, not just another person to protect. This isn't just about weathering a storm, is it? Jenna mused aloud, thinking of their shared struggles. It's about preparing for whatever comes next. Ben looked at her, interest piqued. What do you mean? I don't want to just get through this. I want to face it, to confront my fears. Maybe by overcoming this challenge together, we can all find a different path forward, one where we don't isolate ourselves. Jake nodded in agreement, laying out the gathered supplies. See? That's the spirit. It's a significant step to realize that alongside battling the external storms, we have to tackle the internal ones too. As they assembled essential items and prepared to create a more fortified shelter, Jenna felt a transformation brewing within her. The storm outside was more than a catalyst for physical survival. It was unveiling layers of herself she hadn't dared to confront before. Perhaps learning to rely on others did not undermine her independence. It could enhance her resilience. Just as they finished securing supplies, a deafening crack echoed from outside. A massive branch had fallen, sending debris flying toward the cabin. The moment hung thick in the air, and fear surged anew. Jenna's determination solidified. There was no turning back. She would not shy away from confrontation, whether with the storm or with her own insecurities. This was a challenge that demanded her to rally her inner strength. But the question remained. Would she step forward, or would she allow the shadows of her self-doubt to prevail once more? The next moment would shape the course of not just their immediate survival, but her unfolding journey into embracing the unknown in every aspect of her life. The cabin stood resilient against the blustering storm, its walls solid, but the atmosphere inside charged with uncertainty. Jenna could feel her heart pound synchronously with the heavy thrumming of the wind outside. The deafening crack lingered in her mind, stirring old fears and new realizations alike. She focused intently on the words Jake had just spoken. They were more than just instructions. They were a reminder that her own resolution was just as important as their physical preparations. Determined to not only survive, but also to reforge her connection with vulnerability and teamwork, she began allocating tasks in her mind. Okay, we've got the supplies, Jenna said, steeling her voice against the chaos. Let's figure out how we can be proactive in preparing for any damage while tightening our defenses. We don't need to just wait. Jake raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you have in mind? We can reinforce all the windows with the furniture. If we shift the table against the door, it'll give us some extra protection. And She paused, her instinct for solutions igniting. We can also create a central gathering area near the fireplace to keep warm. We should think about the next phase, not just react to what's happening. Ben nodded slowly, impressed. That's smart. While we work on the barricades, we can set up everything to keep us warm. Jake smiled, a flicker of admiration in his eye. Exactly. This is a team effort. Jenna adjusted the shovel in her hand, the cold metal now a grounded presence. In that moment she understood she was not just the person digging through the snow, but also someone who could alleviate some of the burdens others carried. As Ben and Jake began moving furniture and stacking supplies, Jenna took a moment to observe them, her mind racing with thoughts about her past. How easily had she always cast herself as the default lone wolf, isolated in her self-reliance. But now, as she watched the camaraderie in action, her resolve strengthened. She took a step closer to her companions, becoming part of the collective effort. Let's also gather anything that can serve as makeshift insulation for the windows, Jenna suggested, surprising herself. Old blankets, towels, anything soft. We can pile them against the glass. It won't block out everything, but it can help keep the heat in. Good thinking, Jake called out, clearly impressed. He moved towards the back room, rattling through cupboards as he searched for anything that could support her plan. With renewed energy, Jenna joined him, feeling lighter inside. She rifled through an old trunk, finding tattered quilts and cushions, remnants of forgotten coziness. They embraced a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature, and she felt that nurturing sensation swell within her once again. As they gathered materials, Jenna found herself chatting easily with Jake and Ben. Laughter broke through pinches of tension, their shared fears transforming into a bond, however tenuous. Suddenly, a violent gust rattled the walls, and a fresh layer of snow cascaded from the eaves outside. The sunlight dipped, casting elongated shadows that choked the light in the room. Jenna halted, her laughter stifled as dread crept back in. We can't rely on just barricades and supplies, she asserted, the realization dawning that the storm was more than just a physical manifestation outside. It was also a symbolic representation of her internal struggles. We need to lean on each other too. Vulnerability is strength, especially now. Jake and Ben exchanged glances that confirmed her insight. It was more than a team preparation. It was a window into fostering emotional resilience. We also need to share fears, guys, Jenna continued, emboldened by their reactions. What if we're stuck here for days? Let's confront those worries before they morph into something we can't manage. The tension shifted palpably as they began to voice their concerns, shaping an unexpected plan for emotional survival alongside physical. Jake admitted his fear of failing at protecting them, while Ben acknowledged feeling overwhelmed by the uncertainty of everything he had worked for back home. As the weight of those fears lifted, Jenna realized her own anxiety loosened slightly too. By digging deep together, they were building more than a physical shelter. They were crafting a sense of community that pushed against the storm's impeding isolation. The atmosphere in the cabin transformed, lighting an internal fire as the trio formed a pact to not only survive, but to emerge from that storm as more complete individuals. Just then, another crack echoed from outside, louder and more formidable than before. The shadows lurked like specters as Jenna's heart dropped. She could feel the imminent threat, but something deeper stirred within her, an understanding that confrontation was not merely external. It was a choice to face their insecurities head-on. As she turned her gaze to the others, Jenna felt an electric pull within her, a sense that the storm might strip them down, exposing raw fears, but it would also carve out new strengths. They were all standing on the precipice, and with night falling, the real challenges were just beginning. Would they be able to navigate not just the tumultuous storm outside, but the tumult within? And as that thought pressed on her, she wondered if the true test was just beginning. The crashing wind spiraled against the cabin, a haunting reminder of the chaos that loomed outside. Jenna's heart raced as she surveyed her companions, the candlelight flickering shadows across their faces. They had shared their vulnerabilities, a moment that had forged a fragile bond among them. But now the gravity of the storm seemed to pull them back into their shells. Let's check the windows again, Jenna suggested, her voice steady although anxiety coursed under its surface. The thought of being truly marooned in this isolation sparked old instincts, those of self-preservation. Yet each moment spent with Jake and Ben chipped away at the wall she had erected around herself. Ben moved towards the windows, his movements brisk as he tightened the rugged quilts Jenna had gathered around the panes. If this gets worse, we might need to find a way to keep the fire going. I don't want to risk the chimney getting blocked. Jake nodded, his brow furrowed. Good point. We'll need to make sure we have enough wood stocked up. The practicalities of survival brought a sense of comfort. Yet beneath it, Jenna sensed an impending weight. The shadows deepened, curling ominously in the corners. Jenna clenched her fists, fighting an urge to pull back, to retreat into her familiar patterns of isolation. It was easier to be alone, but she knew this time was different. With her voice steady, she addressed the group. We need to have a plan, not just for the physical aspects, but for our mental resilience too. What do you mean? Ben asked, glancing up from the window, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Jenna breathed deeply, allowing herself a moment before laying her thoughts bare. We've talked about fears, but I think we need to set intentions for how we'll face the coming days. Like, I won't let the storm dictate our emotions. We can confront this mentally too. Her resolution bore the weight of commitment. She could feel the tentative gaze of her companions, assessing the truth behind her claim. I'm in, Jake agreed, animating the atmosphere with a spark. But how do we do that? Just saying it won't be enough. Jenna considered his words, her resolve solidifying. We each take turns leading discussions, focusing on one challenge at a time. What emotions surface? How does each storm within us make this physical one seem more daunting? It's about facing our individual storms, together. Ben grimaced, clearly wrestling with the concept. What if we fall apart? Then we deal with it when it happens, Jenna said, her voice firm. Growth isn't about perfect execution, it's about learning from the messy bits. Jake clapped Ben on the shoulder, offering encouragement. I think it's a good idea. We've got to work together, no more hiding. A flicker of relief washed over Jenna, bolstered by their acceptance. Each moment she engaged with them chipped away at her long-held beliefs of self-sufficiency being synonymous with strength. Now she recognized that vulnerability, admitting fears, seeking support, was a form of power, a strategy for survival, even amidst raging storms. The weight shifted. Shadows no longer loomed as threats but whispered possibilities of future resilience. Jenna embraced that connection, realizing this experience was more than a test of endurance. It was a manifestation of her own evolution, a path where she could redefine herself amid chaos. As the fire crackled, casting warmth over them, Jenna found a flicker of hope igniting inside her, accompanied by uncertainty. The confrontation with their fears would not be easy, and doubt pooled at the edges of her consciousness. But she was determined to face it for her own growth and for the newfound bond they were fostering. An unexpected sound shattered the moment, a muffled thud, distinct against the wind, followed by a low groan that flooded the air. Jenna's heart raced anew, suspicion knotting her stomach. Was it just the storm playing tricks, or was something more ominous lurking beyond the walls? She exchanged a quick glance with Jake and Ben, her mind racing. Was this an external threat, or perhaps an opportunity for a different kind of confrontation? Each breath thick with tension, Jenna stood at the precipice, ready to cascade into the unknown that lay ahead. The air turned still for a moment, absorbing the echoes of the thud, leaving Jenna's heart hammering in the silence. Her instincts kicked in, razor-sharp and alert. A flicker of uncertainty passed over her companions' faces. The earlier connection felt suddenly fragile against the looming threat. Jenna channeled her anxiety into action, focusing on the immediate surroundings, drawing strength from their shared resolve. "Stay here," she whispered, moving toward the door against the pull of fear. "I'll check what it is." The words tumbled from her mouth with more resolve than she felt. This was not merely about confronting potential danger. It was a test of her newfound commitment to face challenges collaboratively. "Wait, Jenna," Ben said, his voice laced with urgency. "You don't know what's out there." "I can't just sit here and wait," she replied, her determination firm. We need to know if we're safe. The feeling of leadership surged within her, a stark contrast to the isolation she often defaulted to. Growing up, she had learned to keep her distance, but now she felt an intrinsic pull to protect her newly formed bonds. With deliberation, she opened the door, the howling wind rushing in to greet her, icy and wild. Squinting through the flurry of snow, Jenna's eyes widened as she spotted a figure hunched against the side of the cabin. She squinted against the wind. It was cloaked with layers but unmistakably human. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice swallowed by the tempest. The figure turned, revealing weary, frostbitten features. "Can you hear me?" The unmistakable jolt of adrenaline brought a rush of urgency, but also risk. "Jenna, don't!" Jake yelled from behind, concern weaving through his words. But the battle between her instinct to retreat and the desire to extend compassion ignited within her. "Help them!" she shouted back, pushing through her own fears. The storm might have buried her old self, but the woman who emerged from the cabin stood unyielding against nature's chaos. The figure stumbled towards her, clearly struggling against the elements. Jenna's instincts screamed for caution, yet the distress radiating from the individual compelled her to act. She took a tentative step forward, feeling the weight of her companion's stares. "Come inside," she urged, teeth chattering. The stranger hesitated, but with another potent gust of wind, Jenna gestured emphatically. "You'll freeze. We can help." Seconds ticked as doubt engulfed her momentarily. What if they were inviting danger into their sanctuary? But therein lay the revelation. Her growth was not only recognizing her fears, but also acting despite them, balancing bravery with caution. With a grunt, the figure stumbled up the steps and crossed the threshold, landing awkwardly in the cabin. Jenna moved to help them, heart racing as she met their gaze, deep-set eyes filled with an unmistakable gratitude mixed with desperation. "Thank you," the person gasped, collapsing to the floor, visibly exhausted. As Jenna knelt beside them, the weight of her choices crystallized. This was the challenge she had sought, a direct confrontation with human vulnerability that invoked both fear and purpose. Something within her shifted as she assessed the newcomer. This person, whoever they were, embodied the chaos of the storm, a stark reminder that surviving was more than just persistence. It was about connection, willingness, and support. She found herself in the face of the unfamiliar. "I'm Jenna, and this is Jake and Ben," she introduced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You're safe now." As they began to settle the newcomer, Jenna realized the true complexity of this experience. Each layer of her past, the fear of connection, the impulse to hide, was being stripped away alongside the physical barriers of the storm. Surrounded by Jake and Ben, she could feel another bond coalescing, starting to shape into something resilient. But as they took care of the stranger, a feeling prickled along Jenna's spine. She had opened a door, and with it came an avalanche of questions. Who were they? What had happened to them out there? As each moment unfurled, Jenna understood that facing the unknown together was her true journey, and it was only just beginning. A sudden flash of realization washed over her. Would confronting the hidden storms of this new arrival offer insights into their own? She exchanged glances with her companions, anticipation buzzing in the air. They had taken the first steps toward true vulnerability, but would they be able to face all that was to come? The strange warmth of the cabin enveloped them, contrasting sharply with the merciless wind outside. As Jenna knelt beside the newcomer, she felt the instinctive desire to gather everyone in a protective embrace. The flicker of candlelight danced across the frozen features of their unexpected guest, painting shadows that whispered stories of hardship. "Who are you?" Jenna asked softly, her voice threaded with curiosity and a hint of caution. The person's labored breaths filled the room, each exhale a reminder of the peril they had escaped. Jenna leaned closer, wanting to pierce through the shroud of silence that bound them. Just a traveler," the stranger replied, their voice barely above a whisper. The fragility in their tone sent ripples of concern through Jenna. What circumstances had led to this moment of desperation? The urge to dig deeper, to understand, coiled tightly in her chest, mingling with her unease. As Jenna studied the figure more closely, She noticed the torn edges of a jacket that once might have been vibrant, but now appeared dulled by the brutal elements. The realization struck her. Just like the fabric, their lives had been frayed by circumstances beyond control. A familiar sense of empathy welled up within her, the understanding that everyone carries invisible scars. Ben moved closer, placing a blanket around the stranger's shoulders, but Jenna couldn't shake the feeling of inertia. She felt a growing responsibility, not only to protect, but also to provide a space for healing. Her journey wasn't just about her own transformation. It was about the connections made through shared struggles. "Do you need anything?" she asked, tilting her head slightly to bring their gazes level. The stranger nodded, but a look of despair flickered across their features. I don't know where to begin." Jenna's heart ached. With each word exchanged, she recognized that her role here extended further than mere guidance. She was also a mirror reflecting strength back at someone who might have lost sight of theirs. "Then let's start small," she said. "You're safe now. We're here to help." The conviction in her voice surprised even her, a testament to the solidarity she had forged with Jake and Ben, an unbreakable link in the eye of the storm. Behind her, Jake paced, his gaze flitting between Jenna and the newcomer. "What if we call for help? Get you back to," he began, but was interrupted, fizzing tension in the air. Both Jenna and their guest shot him a cautionary look. "Not yet," Jenna insisted. "Let them rest first. We can't rush this." Her conviction brought out the latent authority within her, a warrior emerging from the cocoon of her past insecurities. Jake acquiesced, yet the pensive expression remained on his face. An uneasy silence hung in the air. Jenna turned her attention back to the stranger. "The storm outside won't last forever," she reassured them, sensing that they needed more than warmth. They needed hope. As time ticked by, the newcomer spoke of their journey, an arduous trek that had begun weeks prior, with dreams of finding a new start. With each word, Jenna felt a twist in her gut. This story mirrored her own struggles with the past, walking through turbulent emotions to craft a better future. Just as vulnerability encased the cabin, a deafening crack echoed from outside. The howling wind seemed to growl angrily, stirring memories of her own fears, bringing a moment of hesitation. "What was that?" Ben's voice cracked, intermingling with the rising tension. Jenna's gut tightened. Never in her life had she faced such uncertainty, yet this moment felt pivotal. "We stay alert," she stated firmly, hands clenched at her sides, redefining her role in this unfolding tableau. "We can't let the outside storm dictate our inner calm. Would they truly make it out unscathed?" That question swiftly enveloped her perspective, amplifying the weight of the responsibilities she felt growing within. Jenna unexpectedly noticed her hands trembling slightly, a whisper of self-doubt creeping in. The unknown was essential, but how long could they embrace it? The molds of her past were shattering, yet the process felt both thrilling and terrifying. It was a nexus of necessity, where human connection intertwined with her desire to shield those around her. As they huddled together in the dimly lit cabin, a sense of collective purpose began to take root. Jenna found solace in understanding that within each arduous story, mutual strength could flourish. But as the night deepened and morphed into an unsettling quiet, Jenna sensed a looming revelation. Could fear be transformed into something empowering? Clenching her jaw, she faced her companions bravely, ready to confront the specter of uncertainty. Would the secrets of the storm outside bring them closer together, or would it unravel the bonds they had started to form? Tension crackled in the air, teasing her thoughts and forcing her to confront the unknown reality that awaited. She felt her heart race in anticipation of what was to come, as if the tempest itself held secrets far beyond their volatile circumstances. The flicker from the cabin's candles cast a golden hue across the faces surrounding the hearth, but Jenna felt a tightening in her chest, a deep-seated fear melding with the rising tension outside. The newcomer's story resonated in her core, a path of struggle she recognized all too well. Yet as she shared her warmth, a growing responsibility crystallized within her. The storm raged, but so did the storm inside Jenna, an internal tempest of doubts clashing with newfound authority. She had offered hope, yet the weight of that hope felt heavier with every heartbeat. Can I really be the strength they need? She thought, anxiety infusing her musings with shadows of inadequacy. With the stranger now resting, Jenna stepped aside, seeking a moment to breathe. She found herself kneeling by the flame, watching the fire crackle and hiss as she considered her own journey. The flickering light reminded her of her past, one scarred by indecision and a relentless pursuit of approval. Here, amidst the chaos, she began to visualize her growth, contemplating the woman she was becoming. An anchor for others, yes, but also someone still battling her own sea of uncertainty. Through the gradual quietness of the cabin, she caught fragments of opposition in Jake's demeanor. While he had respected her lead, she sensed he was bracing for something, as if he held back the storm brewing in his mind. "What if I'm wrong?" echoed within her as she realized their paths were diverging. His trust in her was fragile, and just as she struggled to trust herself, so did he. "Everything okay?" Ben asked lightly, breaking Jenna's reveries. His casual tone didn't match the seriousness slowly dripping into the atmosphere, yet she appreciated the effort. "Yeah, just thinking," Jenna replied, masking the turmoil roiling inside. "Thinking about what?" he probed, genuine curiosity glinting in his eyes. Her instinct was to deflect, to shield her vulnerabilities, but instead, she found courage. Perhaps it was time to connect more deeply, to unravel layers of themselves, forging a more profound alliance. I'm realizing how much we're all carrying," Jenna admitted, her voice steady. "You both have your journeys, and they matter too. How do we come together without losing ourselves?" As Ben mulled over her words, Jake shifted uncomfortably across the room, the tension in him palpable. "Jenna, I know you want to help, but what if we're not qualified to do so? What if we fail?" The storm outside thrashed in response to their unasked questions, intertwining with their deepest fears. Jenna felt the weight of his words anchor into her mind. She instinctively raised her chin, the flickering candlelight illuminating her resolve. "We have to try, right? Fear doesn't have to dictate our actions." "This isn't just about survival, Jenna. It's about doing it well," Jake challenged. The honesty struck her. It was a confrontation she had subconsciously avoided, reflecting her own fear of failure. "Perhaps it's time to face that fear then," she rejoined, a growing resolve igniting within. "We can fail together, but that's still better than not trying at all." Jake paused, his brow furrowing as he assessed the sincerity in her stance, searching for strength, maybe for himself. He was willing to confront his doubts, and in doing so, perhaps Jenna's own emboldened spirit began to burgeon. They were allies navigating uncharted waters, each revelation paving the way for something larger than themselves. Yet, despite her attempts to inspire unity, a looming question nagged at Jenna. Was the trust they'd forged enough to withstand the outcome of their decisions? The cabin creaked in the wind, somewhat echoing her worries. Would the foundation they were building along with the newcomer ultimately hold? Suddenly, another thunderous crack echoed from outside, jolting them all from their reflective reverie. The fear solidified in a chilling moment of realization. The storm had intensified, and with it came a fresh wave of uncertainty. "Are we prepared for what's to come?" Jenna wondered grimly, gripping the edge of the mantle. With the storm now a potent adversary and doubt still gathering inside her, she faced the truth. They stood on the precipice of not only testing their bond, but of wrestling with deeper fears than nature itself. As she turned to her companions, a resolution formed. "We must make decisions tonight that could change everything. Will we forge ahead despite the unknown?" The air felt thick with decision, each awaiting the next step into the uncertainty. They were on the cusp of something monumental, but the lurking fear of inadequacy loomed like a shadow overhead, threatening to unravel their resolve. What would they choose when faced with the unmistakable call of the storm that threatened to redefine them all? The howling winds outside continued, a relentless reminder of the chaos brewing in nature. But inside the cabin, an unexpected stillness settled, full of anticipation. Jenna clenched her fists at her sides, feeling the weight of each second stretching the fragile bonds they had been nurturing amidst the storm. They had come so far, and yet the unseen dangers felt monumental. Guys, I know we're facing fear, doubt, and anxiety, but this is our moment to define who we are, Jenna declared, her voice steady and powerful as it cut through the silence. She felt a spicy rush of determination coursing through her veins. We can choose to rise above this, not just for ourselves, but for one another too. The spark in Ben's eyes was unmistakable, a glimmer of hope that echoed Jenna's sentiments. Jake shifted his posture, an unspoken consideration painting his expression. The tension that had gripped the air lifted slightly, replaced by the palpable possibility of unity. You're right, Jenna. This isn't just about surviving the storm physically. It's about how we can confront the swell of emotions and fears together, Jake agreed, leaning in closer. We're capable of more than just weathering what's outside. We can transform this experience into something powerful. Jenna felt that shift, the reinforcement of the ties binding them together. Each moment they spent within the comforting walls of the cabin was solidifying new foundations, crafting capabilities they had not fully recognized. Let's create a plan, she continued, animated. We can strategize how we can handle both the external storm and what comes from within. This storm is teaching us resilience, trust, and fortitude, all the qualities that shape our individual paths forward. Ben's fervor ignited. I like that. It's not just about keeping the roof over our heads. We have to prepare ourselves emotionally for when this is over. The warmth of confidence surged within Jenna as her companions rallied around her suggestion. We can start with basics. Define our fears, establish what we want to achieve in the face of chaos, and commit to supporting one another throughout. As the conversation flourished, Jenna noticed a deep connection forming, one that bridged gaps she had always viewed as insurmountable. They shared fears and aspirations, and collectively transformed heavy doubts into shared strengths. Right now, I fear I won't emerge as the mother I want to be for Lucas, Ben admitted, revealing the vulnerability beneath his steady veneer. What if I crumble under this pressure? What if I fail everyone? Jenna stepped closer, feeling compelled to reassure him. That's what we're here for, Ben. To catch each other if we fall. You're not alone in this. None of us is. You're already showing resilience by being here with us. Jake nodded in agreement, his eyes shining with understanding. You're confronting fear in the most powerful way. It's a strength to acknowledge we're all scared. It's what makes us human, after all. Growth emerges in those uncomfortable moments. That's where we'll find who we truly are. The room filled with a sense of camaraderie, and as they continued sharing their fears, Jenna felt her own doubts dissipate into the ether. It was profound to witness firsthand what vulnerability could achieve. That collective formation of inner strength was not only liberating, but transformational. Jenna, I think what you're doing is incredible, Jake said, his tone holding genuine respect. Leadership isn't just about commanding, it's about creating space for everyone to grow together. You're doing that right now. A wave of warmth enveloped her at his words, infused with pride and accomplishment she hadn't expected to feel so soon. Thank you, but it's us, Jenna responded, glancing from Jake to Ben. Each one of us brings unique strengths to this moment, amplifying our collective resilience. With courage ignited, they outlined a plan to fortify their emotional and physical barriers as a united front. They agreed to share their stories more openly during simple tasks, how they would ask for help, seek connection, and foster support in holding on to dreams. As the night deepened and the storm continued to rage outside, Jenna found herself standing at the threshold of something monumental. The weight of her past was less like a chain anchoring her and more like a distant echo. She had discovered the purpose of her strength within the character of the company she kept. Each story and shared emotion became a building block for her own healing, slowly molding her perception of strength. She realized that connection didn't dilute her independence. It enriched and reinforced it, a revelation that felt both liberating and invigorating. Suddenly the howling wind stilled, a momentary calm before the storm. They held their breath, anticipation hanging in the air like fragile glass. In the heart of that fleeting silence, Jenna glanced around at her newly formed family, their eyes saying what words could not. They had laid bare their souls. They stood together, prepared to face whatever still lurked beyond the storm. Together they seemed resolute, as if every moment shared fortified them against the ongoing tempest outside and within. Jenna felt confidence surge within her. She was not the same girl who had stepped into the storm's embrace. No matter what comes next, I will not shy away from connection or challenge. I will seize this opportunity to grow, she resolved, embracing the overwhelming sense of belonging. As the winds howled back to life, threatening to devour them whole, they stood as one, unwavering, entwined in purpose and unity. The storm was fierce, but in that moment, they had discovered their own fierceness within, a metaphorical light in darkness, ready to face the unknown together. A love forged in trust and vulnerability, both in their hearts and reflections, made this storm and this journey so much more than survival. Through the ravages of a merciless tempest, Jenna emerged transformed, not merely as a survivor, but as a warrior of compassion, resilience, and unbreakable connection. She had changed, and as they fortified their bond against the storm, her heart swelled with an understanding. It was in confronting not only the storm without, but also the storms within, where true strength lay, waiting to be discovered. This was her moment of realization, not just to weather, but to thrive. Jenna stepped forward brightly, ready not only to embrace this storm but to emerge from it with renewed purpose, soul illuminated, empowered by the relationships formed, marking the start of a profound journey unlike anything she had yet understood. The storm outside might rage, but within that cabin, hope burned brightly, or perhaps it was a flickering candle whispering promises of change, resilience, and shared dreams becoming a vivid reality. Now was the time. This was their moment. It was more than survival. It was the essence of life itself, embracing dreams, confronting fears, and nurturing connections that bound them together. As the next wave crashed against the cabin, they knew, whatever happened now, they would face it together. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.